Hello everyone! So as the title already tells you, I crashed my car. And before any of you starts to worry, I'm fine. I didn't hurt myself whatsoever. My car, on the other hand, that's a bit of a different story. So to set the scene a little bit, it was Wednesday night. I had a day off, but I didn't have anyone to spend Valentine's with. So I just decided to go to volleyball. However, it was really dark and rainy out and really windy as well. So I was already a bit on my guard with driving. I was already past Coventry, I was really near Rugby, but I was on the A45 and I know that the junction to Rugby is really easy to miss. So I was really on my guard to not miss it because I had missed it before in the past. Now this bit is a bit hard to explain. So just before the junction I actually needed to have, there's an old junction. However, this is not blocked off whatsoever. And the stupid thing is, I knew it was there because I had seen it before. I was like, oh, hey, that's like confusing. Like people could think that's an actual junction. So it was dark and I was just really keen on not missing it. And I thought, oh shoot, this is the junction. So I drove up that lane. And it was not the junction I needed to have. So it was basically a dead end. And I just kind of grinded to a halt on a pile of rubble and sharp rocks. I was going 60 miles an hour. That's like 100 kilometers an hour. So I hit it really hard. But luckily, like, I didn't hit anything from the front. All the force was underneath the car. So yeah, in that sense I was lucky. But I just, it scared me really, really bad. So the first thing I did was call the AA. I was like on their priority list, blah, 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 but it was gonna take an hour for them to come. So after like a minute or 10, I called my parents, I calmed down a bit, I stepped out of the car and I just started like inspecting it. But it was raining outside and it was freezing and it was windy. So I just kind of like took my flashlight off my phone and it just like looked at the car, the wheels were on the ground, and I looked under the hood and I didn't see anything. So I started the car, it was still running, so I drove it backwards off the hill I was on, and it all went fine. So I was contemplating on what I was going to do. The thing was, I really wanted to get out of there because I was next to a highway and I just didn't feel very safe there, even though there was quite a lot of space, so it wasn't too unsafe for me to stand there actually. But I decided to drive to the junction I actually needed to take, which was like 200 meters down the road. So I did that. But the whole car was kind of like shaking and it was pulling me to the right. So I was like, ooh, this is not good. So I drove off the junction and the next roundabout, like I took a turn and I stopped. And I called my parents again and I explained them like, oh, the car's doing weird things. And they were like, oh, that's not good, maybe something like is crooked. And then a friend of ours yelled on the background, maybe you have a flat tire. So I walked around the car and I had a flat tire, which I didn't check before I drove off, which was dumb. It was on the right side and I get in the car on the left side, but I should have checked. But that's the whole thing of this whole story. I should have checked. To be honest, I should have just waited on that first spot where the accident happened, because I'm going to get to that later. So, I have a flat tire, I do have a spare tire, but I have no idea how to do this myself. It's raining, it's cold, it's dark, etc. So I wasn't like planning on fiddling with it myself. So I called the AA again. This time I was less of a priority, of course. So it took them 1.5 hours to come. But the weird thing was, the guy who came was affiliate garage, so it wasn't the AA like van itself. He was with a tow truck. So they were still doing it like my first request because I thought I was stuck. But I cancelled that. And then I called them again. But there was a tow truck. I know, it was very weird. So this guy comes and I tell him I have a flat tire, blah blah blah. And he doesn't even look at the car really. So I just tell him that I want the tire replaced. He does that for me. And when he crutches up the car, I was like, can you check under the car if there's like nothing hanging loose? So he does that. and all seems fine. I did bend the rim a bit because I drove the car, or that might have been the impact, I don't know. So we switched the tires, it was fine. He didn't check under the hood. I didn't check under the hood. So I get in the car, and it was a really nice guy. So he was like, I'll drive behind you for a bit, and if you think everything's okay, just flash at me with your lights and then I'll go off. So we drove for a bit, and the car seemed fine. I did hear like a slight ticking noise, but I just wanted to get home at that point. It was 11 o'clock. I crashed the car around like 7:30, 7:40, and it was already 11 o'clock. I wanted to go home. So I thought it will be fine. So I flashed at him. He takes the next turn. I go up the highway. I try to make speed. And it won't go over 80 kilometers an hour. And then it starts going back. Like the speed goes back. And I'm going slower and slower. And I like shift gear back. And then it goes even slower. And I was on another highway with no hard shoulder. So I was just like looking for one of those like cape in thingies where you can park if you're in an emergency, and there was nothing, and it was dark, and then like I luckily hit one and just kind of like mushed it in there, and it went dead. My car stopped. So there I was, 11 o'clock in the dark next to a really busy road, and I was so close to the lane that every time a car passed me, my whole car would shake through the wind. Because it was a 70 miles an hour road. That's 110 kilometers. It's basically a highway. And I was like, my car was just past the line of the road. Like, I was so close. And there were so many trucks and a lot of speeding cars. And I was just, I won't lie to you. I was fucking yelling. When my car stopped, I was like screaming. Because I just wanted to go home. So, point was, I was stuck again, called the AA again. I was highest priority, but it would take them another hour. Which it almost did. 50 minutes. I had to wait for another 50 minutes for someone to come and help me. And he came. Pops open the hood, as you should do as a fucking mechanic. And he was like, oh, you know you have no water in your cooling system. I was like, I did not see that. So he gets some water and he pours it in my cooling system. And it just drains out faster than he can pour it in. I busted the radiator when I hit that hill. I busted it and I didn't notice. And because I drove the car, I blew the head gasket so you could smell fumes in the cooling system. So my car's bust. Because that's gonna be a really expensive repair. And my car isn't worth that much money. Like, it's 20 years old. I like my car though. So point was, we were still next to the highway. My car wouldn't drive anymore. So he would just have to pull me to safety first. Normally, if you have an English insurance, they can pull you to a garage and like they can like look at it and fix it, and the AA will have like certain coverage for that. But I have a Dutch insurance. So they had no idea what they could do for me. Didn't know what they could do for me either. So the only thing he could really do was get me out of there because it was a really unsafe spot. So he connected my car to his car with like a bar thingy. So he towed me to Coventry. Got a compliment that I was good at steering my car that was being towed. It was my first time being towed. So anyway, so we parked in just a alleyway in Coventry. He assured me it was a really safe neighborhood. It's currently Saturday. It's still there. I haven't had any time to go there. I haven't had any time to look at what the frick I need to do. So at this point, I'm in Coventry. My car won't work anymore. I just took all the stuff out of it that I needed. And he brought me to a petrol station. And at this point, a friend of mine from work already contacted me, asking if I was okay and if I needed help. And I told her that I needed to be picked up. So she and her friend borrowed a car from someone else who was already like half asleep. And they drove to Coventry, which is an hour drive almost. So when they came there, I was just so relieved. I was so happy that they were there. But it's actually kind of funny because they borrowed a car, which means in England you don't insure the car, but you insure the person driving the car, which means they were driving uninsured. And the guy who drove the car had lost his wallet like weeks ago, and he's Australian, so he didn't have an actual license on him. It was a van, so that holds 2 people. But they came with 2 people. So we had to fit 3 people in the front of that van. We couldn't fit like on a chair with the 2 of us. So my friend had one leg on the steering side and one leg on the passenger side. She couldn't actually really sit, so she just did a air chair for like 50 minutes. I couldn't do it. I'm impressed. But because she sat like that, we also couldn't wear our seatbelts. There was just so much going wrong in that situation. What actually made it worse was because he was driving someone else's car, at some point he flicked the light switch the wrong way, which made all the lights go out. Like, not just the inside lights, outside lights, everything. There are not a lot of like street lights in England, at least not in the area we are, so everything just went pitch black. And we all panicked until he found the switch. I was like, I don't want to crash again. Like, oh my god, I just had the worst like 5 hours of my life. Please don't crash us. So at that point, it was like past 1 o'clock. So luckily we didn't have any police or whatever controls, because the whole situation was just slightly illegal. I was home at 2 o'clock. I crashed my car around 7:40. I had the worst evening ever. This whole thing could have been, avoided maybe if they would have blocked off that fucking junction, because it doesn't lead anywhere except, I heard it was an old quarry or something, but it's not something people need to go to on a regular basis. So like, put on some like signs or a barrier or whatever. I just mistook it. That was really dumb from my part. And one thing that annoys me about this whole situation is that I made it so much worse. I made it so much worse by driving the car. I should have just left it there. I should have just waited that hour, because then I would have been there around like 8:40. They would have put my car on that tow truck. We would have gone to a garage, and I would have been home by like 10. But no. I always have to make stuff so much worse for myself. So at this point, I don't know what to do with the car. It's kind of too expensive to repair. Because the only insurance I have on it is, we call it WA, which basically means that I'm insured if I hit someone else, so that they get their money back. I don't have like an all-in insurance, which will cover my mistakes, which I should have gotten. Anyway, so I kinda have to write off my car. That means that I don't have a car here, so I might have to get an English car, but I'm not used to shifting gear with my left hand. Plus, the insurance here is crazy expensive. So either I'm doing that, or I'm getting another car from the Netherlands, which means I have to go to the Netherlands, buy a car, and drive it back up here. Which is also quite an ordeal. So, yeah. I don't know. I'm an idiot. So, that was the story about how I crashed my car. It's still very fresh. I was really exhausted on Thursday, like mentally. I'm still pretty tired. And I will have to figure out what to do. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you like my despair, hit the like button. And I will see you guys very soon. Bye!